The first false rain hit the courtroom windows like 1,000 tiny drums. The room was quiet, heavy with tension. Sundar Pichai stood at the center, hands calmly folded in front of him. Across from him sat the judge, an old man with sharp eyes and a mouth curled into a permanent frown. "Mr. Pichai," the judge said, dragging the words out. "Remind me again, what does a tech executive like you know about the real world?" A low ripple of laughter moved through the room. The camera zoomed in on Sundar's face. He didn't flinch. He didn't blink. But something inside him cracked, just a little. He remembered where he had come from, a small house in Chennai. A father who worked double shifts to buy him his first bicycle. A mother who saved coins in a glass jar for his school books. They hadn't raised him to be mocked, but this was no ordinary case. 2 months earlier, Sundar had been invited to speak at a Youth Innovation Summit. It was supposed to be simple, inspiring, but he had made a mistake. He had taken a chance on someone the world had already thrown away, and now he was being held responsible. The girl's name was Meena, 17, bright, sharp, curious. He had seen her after his speech standing alone by the vending machine, holding a notebook full of ideas. "What's your dream?" He had asked her. She had looked at him, eyes wide. "I want to build something that helps my village. Clean water, solar energy. Something useful." He smiled. "Then let's get you started." He didn't ask for permission. Didn't check her record. Didn't know she had once been arrested for shoplifting food when her mother was sick and jobless. He just saw someone who reminded him of himself. He gave her a laptop, an internship. A chance. And for a while it worked. Meena worked day and night, built a small solar prototype and started pitching it to companies. Sundar even introduced her to a few executives, but then something happened. Someone broke into a research lab. Files were copied. Systems were breached. And Meena disappeared. They said she had stolen secrets, that she had lied to Sundar. And now here he was accused of using company resources for personal projects, putting corporate data at risk, and trusting someone he shouldn't have. "You let your emotions blind you," the judge said. "A man in your position should know better." Sundar's voice was calm. "I believe in giving people a second chance." "You gave a thief a toolkit," the judge snapped. "And now you want us to applaud your kindness?" The courtroom murmured again. Sundar looked at the floor. He thought about Meena's quiet voice, the way her hands shook when she presented her project, the pride in her eyes when it worked. Was he wrong to believe in her? Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. His reputation was slipping. Board members were distancing themselves. Investors were nervous. Social media burned with questions and mockery. He sat alone in his hotel room that night. No family around. No calls from friends. Just the sound of rain and the quiet buzz of the mini fridge. He opened his laptop and found a single email. It was from Meena. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean for it to go this way, but I had to do it." They wouldn't listen. They were hiding something. He stared at the screen, heart racing. What was she talking about? He clicked the attachment. A video. The screen went black for a moment. Then a hidden camera view appeared. Blurred faces. Muffled voices. A heated argument. And then something terrifying. A plan to shut down a clean water initiative. To bury test results. To keep a village in the dark because profits would fall. His stomach twisted. Meena hadn't betrayed him. She had uncovered the truth. But why run? Why leave him behind? He closed the laptop slowly, heart pounding in his chest. The next morning, he walked back into the courtroom. The judge looked up. Double quotes, "Mr. Pichai, have you reconsidered your position?" Sundar said nothing. Instead, he placed a single USB drive on the witness table. The judge frowned. "What's this?" Sundar looked him in the eye. "Proof," he said. And then he sat down. The room fell silent. And somewhere far away, a girl with a stolen laptop and a broken heart waited to see what he would do next. Asterisk the fire beneath judges. Fingers hovered over the small USB drive like it was a loaded weapon. The courtroom, once filled with whispers and mocking laughter, had fallen into a strange silence. Sundar sat calmly, but his chest felt tight. His breaths were even deliberate. Every second that ticked by felt like an hour. Mr. Pichai, the judge said finally, voice slower now. What exactly am I looking at? Sundar didn't answer right away. He wanted the weight of the moment to settle. He wanted the room to feel the gravity that had pulled him into this storm. And most of all, he wanted them to realize that this wasn't just a story about a girl from a village or a CEO who made a mistake. This was about something much bigger. It's footage. Sundar said at last, voice low but steady. Footage. Meena captured, secretly and dangerously. The judge raised an eyebrow. And you believe this will clear your name? It won't clear my name, Sundar replied, but it might clear hers. The bailiff took the drive to a technician seated in the corner of the courtroom. The large monitor behind the judge flickered, then turned black. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the screen lit up. The video was shaky, as though recorded from inside a backpack or hidden in a coat pocket. The angle was low, the sound muffled, but the voices those came through clearly. We pull the project now. We avoid the reports leaking. No one in the village can prove anything. And the water contamination data? Destroyed. Gone. No digital footprint. All we need is silence. A long pause. Another voice, quieter, older. And the girl, what does she know? Enough, but she's scared. If we act now, we bury this. Profits stay untouched. The courtroom gasped. Sundar didn't blink. He had already heard it all the night before, alone in the dark. But hearing it again here, in front of strangers who had doubted him, made the pain resurface. It burned in his chest like a hidden fire. The judge stared at the screen, eyes narrowed, then turned back to Sundar. You're telling me this girl, this intern, stumbled upon a cover-up? No, Sundar said. She didn't stumble on anything. She fought her way into the truth. His voice carried now, louder, not angry, but lit with something powerful. You want to know why I trusted her? Why I gave her that laptop? That internship? Because I saw someone who had been denied everything in life, yet still believed she could make something better. She didn't lie, she didn't steal. She did what no one else in that room had the courage to do. She told the truth. The judge leaned back, silent. For once he looked unsure, but not everyone in the room was moved. One of the prosecution lawyers stood. She was sharp, calculated. Every word she spoke felt like it was crafted to wound. So you're suggesting, Mr. Pichai, that this intern who was once arrested for theft, who has no formal education beyond high school, who bypassed every protocol in your company, should be seen as a hero? Sundar turned his head slowly, meeting her eyes. I'm saying that heroism doesn't come with credentials. She scoffed. And you expect us to believe this wasn't a manipulation? But she didn't feed you this story after the breach. Knowing you protect her. You didn't reply with words. Instead, he opened his laptop again and projected another file, a time-stamped chat log. Weeks before the breach. In it, Meena had written, they're hiding something. The data doesn't match the field reports. I don't know who to trust. But I'll keep digging. This isn't right. The courtroom held its breath. The lawyer sat down slowly, but the judge wasn't finished. Mr. Pichai, you've made your point. You've humanized this intern. You've presented evidence of potential wrongdoing. But you also put your company's security at risk. You acted outside of protocol. You make decisions alone. Why? Sundar paused. His fingers curled around the edge of the table, not from nervousness, but memory. He saw his father again, holding wires and blueprints late into the night, even when there was no electricity. He saw his mother boiling water on a small stove during a flood, just to make tea and keep life normal. He remembered what it felt like to be overlooked, underestimated. To be told you didn't belong at the table. He looked up, eyes clear, because someone once did the same for. He said, when I was a boy with nothing but questions and broken shoes, someone gave me a chance. Someone saw what I could become. And if Meena ends up being more than the world expected, I'll take that risk every time. The judge didn't reply. Recess bell rang. The hearing would resume in an hour outside the courthouse. The sky had cleared. Sun poured through the clouds like a quiet promise. Sundar stepped outside briefly. Cameras flashed. Reporters shouted. But his mind was elsewhere. He pulled out his phone. There was a single message from an unknown number. You shouldn't have shown the video. Now they'll come after you too. No signature? Asterisk. But he knew it was from her. He stared at the screen, reading it again. The words weren't angry. They were scared, deep inside. A truth began to settle. This wasn't over. The people behind that meeting weren't just going to admit defeat. They had power, influence, and secrets worth billion. They weren't going to let it go. Not quietly, and now. Sundar was in their way, as he turned to head back into the courtroom. A sleek black car pulled up across the street. The windows were tinted. The license plate was missing, inside. A man in a dark suit spoke into a phone. He just made himself a target. He closed the call. The car didn't drive away. Asterisk. It waited. Asterisk hunted. The courtroom felt colder when Sundar returned. The walls seemed taller. The people more distant. The energy had changed, not because of the evidence he'd shown, but because of something else, something invisible. Eyes followed him, not just with suspicion now, but with unease. As if some unspoken line had been crossed. As if the truth he had dared to reveal had started a fire that others had tried hard to keep buried. He sat down slowly at the defense table. A cup of water trembled in his hand, not because of fear, but because of awareness, because he understood, now more than ever, that the real fight had just begun. The judge returned, his face unreadable. He adjusted his glasses and scanned his notes. We will now hear final statements for today's session, he said. Mr. Pichai, you may speak. Sundar stood, but this time his posture was different. Less like a man defending himself, and more like someone walking into the unknown with clarity. The weight of years, mistakes, dreams, and a sense of duty pressed against his shoulders. Your Honor, he began, I didn't come here to save myself. I came here to save what's left of our belief that integrity still matters. I gave a young girl a chance, not because she earned it on paper, but because she carried something more powerful than credentials hope. And that hope led her into something dangerous, something corrupt. I didn't expect this trial. I didn't expect betrayal. But I also didn't expect to find hidden inside her courage a truth the rest of us had forgotten. The cost of silence is always higher than the price of speaking out. He sat down. Silence. The judge nodded once. Court is adjourned until Thursday. All evidence submitted will be reviewed. The gavel struck as the crowd shuffled out. Sundar remained seated. He needed a moment, breath. A thought to land. Phone buzzed again. Another unknown number. Another message. You were warned. Now they're watching your family. He froze. The room seemed to vanish around him. His wife. His children. They had been out of the spotlight. Safe. Untouched by all this. And now they were part of it. He stood up so fast the chair nearly tipped. Outside the courthouse, chaos waited. Reporters swarmed, their voices loud, sharp, hungry. Microphone shoved into his face. Mr. Pichai, do you think you're a hero or a fool? Did you really believe that video would protect you? Are you afraid for your safety? He said nothing. He stepped through them like a ghost and climbed into his car. His driver, Raj, was waiting. Loyal, quiet, and one of the few people Sundar trusted completely. Back to the hotel, sir? Raj asked. No, Sundar said. Take me to my family, now. They drove in silence through the city. The buildings blurred by like ghosts of ambition. And steel. Traffic lights changed, people crossed streets, life moved forward. But for Sundar, time had paused. His mind was racing. What had he exposed? How many people had he unknowingly placed in danger? And why had no one stopped this before? His wife met him at the door, confusion in her eyes. You're early? She said. Is everything... Where are the kids? He asked. Upstairs, she said slowly, doing homework. He hugged her tightly, longer than usual. She felt it immediately. The tension. The quiet panic beneath the surface. Sundar, she said gently. What's going on? He looked into her eyes. They've started watching us. Her breath caught. He went upstairs, peeked into his son's room. The boy was building something with tiny wires, a look of deep focus on his face. In his daughter's room, she was sketching on a tablet, something bright. Filled with light and shapes that didn't belong to the world, Sundar was trapped in. He stepped back. He couldn't let them be touched by this. Not by the fear, the threats, the silent war brewing behind his trial. He went back downstairs and called Raj again. I need you to take them somewhere safe, Sundar said. For how long? I don't know, Sundar replied. Just until I know who's behind this. Hours later, as night fell over the city, Sundar sat alone in his hotel room. He stared at his laptop, the screen glowing softly. He pulled up the video again, one from Meena. He watched the scene unfold, frame by frame. The voices, the faces, the tension dot, and then he noticed something. A detail he had missed the first time. A badge on one of the men's jackets. Small, barely visible. It bore a symbol, 3 triangles nested inside each other. He searched for it. An old logo. Long abandoned. A defunct subsidiary of a global energy corporation. One that had shut down its clean water division years ago after a scandal that was quietly buried. Except, not entirely. He leaned forward. Staring at the screen, there was a name stitched under the badge. K. Ramanathan. Froze. That name. He hadn't heard it in years. Ramanathan had once been a senior engineer. Brilliant. Respected. But he had left under strange circumstances after clashing with Sundar's board over ethical concerns. No one had seen him since and now here he was in the background of a meeting about data suppression, cover-ups, and silence. The pieces clicked into place. This wasn't just about protecting profit. It was about revenge. A slow, patient kind. The kind that waits in the shadows until the right moment. The kind that doesn't come for you directly, but takes everything around you first. His phone buzzed again. This time, it was a video. A live feed. His children. Asleep in a different home. Red dot flickered in the corner of the screen. He stood up. Heart racing. Someone was watching them. Someone wanted him to know. They were close. He grabbed his coat, his phone, and rushed out the door. In the hallway, a man in a dark suit passed him. Their eyes met briefly. The man said nothing, didn't slow down, but Sundar knew. He was being followed, not just by reporters, not just by critics, but by something much worse. The truth had a price. And he was starting to understand how high it was. Asterisk, the edge of silence, the city at night, had a different rhythm, slower, but no less alive. Lights flickered behind glass towers. The sound of distant traffic echoed like whispers from another world. And above it all, a sky too heavy with secrets pressed down on Sundar Pichai's shoulders as he walked through the alley behind his hotel. He didn't run. He didn't hide. But his steps were faster than usual, sharper. Every sound seemed louder now. The creak of a dumpster, the hiss of a vent, the faraway bark of a dog. Shadows moved in the corners of his vision, but he didn't stop to look. His phone buzzed in his coat pocket, and he knew without checking that it was another warning. They weren't just watching him anymore. They were waiting for him to make a mistake. He had already sent his family away, tucked them into a safe house with 3 layers of security, 2 trusted guards, and a promise he wasn't sure he could keep. He had said they'd be fine, that this would all be over soon, but the look in his wife's eyes had told him. She didn't believe it. Neither did he. He made his way into a small cafe that hadn't closed yet, tucked between 2 shuttered buildings. The lights were dim, the smell of old coffee and warm bread lingering in the air. Only one other person sat inside, a young man hunched over a notebook. Sundar nodded to the barista behind the counter and slipped into the back booth. He opened his laptop. No Wi-Fi. Good. He didn't want to connect to anything. Not yet. He pulled up the file again. The frame with K. Ramanathan, the former engineer. The man no one had heard from in years, What had happened to him after that board meeting? Sundar remembered it clearly now. A heated argument. Documents thrown onto the table. Ramanathan had accused the board of signing off on a water purification model that didn't meet health standards. He had said the data was manipulated, filtered, twisted. The board hadn't listened. Sundar had been a mid-level executive back then. He hadn't been in the room when Ramanathan walked out, but he had heard the rumors. 6 months later, the project was shut down. A vague press release. No questions. No accountability. And now, Ramanathan was back. Only this time, he wasn't fighting for justice. He was hiding behind the very thing he once tried to expose. And somehow, Meena had stumbled into the middle of it. Sundar closed his eyes and leaned back. The sound of the rain outside had returned. Soft but steady. It reminded him of home. Of Chennai in monsoon season. Of plastic buckets placed under leaky ceilings. Of the way his mother used to hum quietly while sweeping water out the front. How far he had come. And how close he was now to losing everything. His phone buzzed again. This time, not a warning. It was a location pin. No message. Just a drop. On the map. A small village on the outskirts of the city, near the hills. A place called Siruvani. He remembered that name. Meena had mentioned it once during her presentation. It was where she grew up, where her people still struggled to get clean water, where children walked miles with jerry cans for something most people in the city took for granted. Was she there now? Was this a trap? Probably, but he didn't hesitate. He left the cafe without touching the coffee that had been placed in front of him. The young man in the corner looked up as he walked out. Their eyes met briefly. Sundar saw something behind them. Awareness. Calculation. He kept walking. 30 minutes later, he reached the village. The road turned to gravel, then to mud. The air was cooler here, heavier, the lights dimmer. He stepped out of the car and walked toward the only building with its lights still on. Community center. He pushed the door open. And there she was. MENA. Sitting cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by papers, wires, and a glowing screen. Her hair was tied back, her eyes hollow from lack of sleep, her hands trembling slightly as she soldered something that looked like a homemade filter mechanism. She looked up. And for a long moment, neither of them said anything. Then she spoke. You shouldn't have come. You shouldn't have run, he replied. She stood up, wiping her hands on her jeans. I didn't run. I disappeared. There's a difference. He stepped closer. They're watching me. They're threatening my family. Her eyes dropped. Guilt washed over her face. I didn't want that, she whispered. I thought if I vanished, they'd stop. They don't stop, he said. They just hide until they need to strike. She gestured toward the equipment behind her. I found the original data from the old water project. Everything Ramanathan tried to protect. They were going to use a cheaper chemical compound. In the filtration unit, it caused neurological damage in kids. But it cost 30% less. Sundar's jaw tightened. And they buried it, they erased it, paid off scientists, moved the factory offshore. No one cared. And now they're trying again. Under a different name? She nodded. The same model, the same shortcuts. But this time, in smaller villages where media won't look. He sat down beside her, staring at the glowing filter. And this, a solution. No chemicals, gravity-based, sustainable, cheap. How cheap? $5 per family per year. Sundar blinked. You built this yourself, she smiled faintly. No, I built it with everything you gave me. The laptop, the internship, the faith. He looked at her. Really looked. Not as a liability or a mistake or a symbol, but as a person, a young girl who had carried the weight of a lie too big for her shoulders and still found the courage to fight. They're going to come here. He said, they won't stop now. I know, she replied. But I'm not running again. He stood up. Neither would he. They stayed up all night backing up files, organizing the documents, building a case stronger than the courtroom would ever expect. Meena showed him every corrupted report, Every fake invoice, every scientist who had been paid to disappear. They had evidence. And now, they had purpose. But as dawn crept over the hills, casting long shadows across the ground, they heard it, a car engine. No headlights. Just movement. Slow. Deliberate. Coming closer. End of part 4 asterisk. The silence between Heartbeach car came to a stop just outside the community center. No headlights. No sound. The village, still blanketed in darkness, held its breath. Inside. Sundar and Meena froze. She was still crouched near the computer, hands hovering over the keyboard, mid-keystroke. Sundar stood behind her, shoulders tense, eyes fixed on the door. The files were ready, compressed, encrypted, and uploaded to a secure cloud, but only halfway through the final transfer. The last folder was taking longer than it should. And now, someone was outside. "Don't move," Sundar said, voice low and steady, though his heartbeat was pounding like a war drum inside his chest. Meena nodded silently. Her fingers went back to the keyboard. She minimized the window, locked the screen, and yanked the flash drive from the side port, tucking it into the seam of the old mattress on the floor. Her hands trembled as she stepped away, but her eyes were cleared. A knock came. Slow, heavy, deliberate. Not someone asking to come in. That's someone letting them know. There was no escape. Sundar glanced around the room. One window. Small. Narrow. Really big enough for a person. The back door was locked and rusted shut from years of neglect. The building was a forgotten place, never meant for confrontation, only for small community meetings and half-hearted charity programs. Double quotes. Do they know we're in here? Meena whispered. They don't knock unless they do, Sundar replied. The knock came again. Then silence. Then footsteps. Circling the building. Sundar moved toward the main door. He didn't open it. Instead, he pressed his ear to the wood and listened. 3 distinct steps. Maybe 4. Heavy boots. No voices. Trained, not casual. They weren't here to argue. They were here to clean up. He stepped back and turned to Meena. There's only one way out. The window. You first, she said. Double quotes. No. You go. Take the flash drive. If anything happens to. Stop, she said sharply, her voice suddenly hard. I didn't come this far for you to play the hero alone. We both go. Or no one does. He hesitated. For a moment, he saw her not as the young girl he had once given a chance to, but as an equal. As someone who had already sacrificed more than most adults would dare. Someone who had every reason to run but had chosen to fight. He nodded. She pulled the mattress aside, grabbed the flash drive, and climbed onto the small table by the window. Sundar helped her lift the frame open. It creaked loud enough to make both of them wince. Go, he whispered. She slid through the frame and dropped into the dirt. Outside. Just as she landed. The front door burst open. A shadowed figure stepped. Inside. Flashlight sweeping the room. Sundar didn't move. His back was to the window, his body blocking their only exit. The light hit him square in the chest. Mr. Pichai, the man said. You shouldn't be here. Sundar recognized the voice. Calm, efficient, like a man ordering coffee instead of delivering threats. Neither should you, Sundar replied. We don't want this to get violent, the man said. Then walk away, Sundar said. And let us fix what you broke. The man stepped forward, light glinting off a piece of metal in his hand. Not a weapon, a device. A signal jammer. You sent something, didn't you? He asked. Files, documents. You already know the answer, Sundar said. The man didn't smile, didn't blink. Do you think people care about chemicals in a poor village? About old reports and broken systems? Sundar stepped forward. I care. The man raised the device slightly. And look where that's gotten you. But before he could press the trigger, a noise came from outside. A sudden, loud, crashing sound. A scream. The man turned. That was enough. Sundar moved. He slammed into the man with his full weight, knocking the device out of his hand. It hit the floor and skidded under a chair. They struggled, fists and elbows knocking over furniture. sending dust into the air. The man was stronger, more trained. Sundar took a blow to the side of his head that made the room tilt. But he didn't fall. He thought of his children. He thought of me in a Dot, and he fought back Dot outside. Meena had circled to the back, found a rusted metal rod leaning against the side wall, and used it to break the jammed rear door. The crash was what had distracted the man. She burst in, breathless, just as Sundar drove the man into the wall. "Get the drive out of here." Sundar shouted Dot, but she didn't move. She picked up the fallen device instead and hurled it out the window. Dot, then she grabbed the man's collar. "You ruined lives," she hissed. "And you think no one will remember?" The man tried to rise, but Sundar kicked a chair leg, pinning him beneath it. Dot sirens, Dot faint, Dot, but real. "Coming from the highway? You called the police?" Meena asked. "No," Sundar said. "But someone did." They looked out the window. Raj, his driver, he was standing on the road, waving a flashlight. Behind him, a small convoy of local officers arrived, some honest, some not, but at least one had enough integrity to respond within minutes. The building was swarming. The man was taken into custody. Sundar and Meena stood outside, shivering. In the early morning cold, wrapped in old blankets the villagers had brought. No one said much. But the air felt different now, less like fear, more like possibility. A young officer approached. "We found a second car down the road," he said, "and backup files hidden in the community center. Whatever this is, it's not small." Meena nodded. It never was. By the time the sun rose fully over the hills, the files had been verified, and a whistleblower case had been opened. But the danger wasn't over. Before the officers drove away with the man in cuffs, he turned to Sundar and said one quiet sentence. "You've only peeled back the first layer." The last stand, the world had shifted. What began in silence was now echoing across continents. By the end of the week, the video footage Meena had captured was everywhere. It played on news broadcasts, on handheld screens in coffee shops, on the televisions of government offices and classrooms. The images were blurred, the faces shadowed for legal reasons, but the message was clear. Someone powerful had tried to poison a future. And two people, one man who gave a chance, and one girl who took it, had stopped them. But truth, Sundar quickly learned, doesn't bring peace. It brings pressure. And pressure is its own kind of war. Within days, Sundar was summoned to testify at an international summit on corporate ethics and environmental justice. It wasn't just about the water now. The web had grown. The documents revealed other deals, contracts for infrastructure, health policies quietly buried, emergency response, delays tied to profits. It stretched across borders, companies, even governments. His name was at the center of it all, not as a villain, but as the one who had torn the curtain back. They wanted to hear from him, but not everyone wanted him to speak. The morning of the summit, Sundar stood at the window of his hotel room, high above the city, watching the fog roll over the skyline. He hadn't slept. His mind had been turning all night, each thought another weight. Pressing down on his chest. The room behind him was quiet. On the bed lay a folder, every document Meena had recovered. And beside it, the invitation to speak, printed in gold letters. Formal, cold, too clean for the chaos they were standing in. He turned away from the window. When his phone buzzed. No number. Just one line. Asterisk. You still have time to walk away. He stared at it, not surprised. He had received 5 messages like it in the last 2 days. The threats weren't loud now. They were quiet, clinical, the kind that didn't scream, they whispered because they knew fear didn't need volume. Across the room, Meena was sitting cross-legged on the floor, rechecking the final presentation they had created, the one that would be played for the world. She hadn't said much all morning. Her shoulders were stiff, her face pale. She hadn't eaten. Sundar could tell the weight of it was hitting her. He sat beside her. "You don't have to go," he said gently. She looked up. "Neither do you." He smiled faintly. "We're alike that way." An hour later, they walked into the summit hall together. It was massive, high ceilings, cold lights, walls lined with people in suits and headsets, whispers in dozens of languages streaming into tiny earpieces. Journalists stood behind barriers. Cameras blinked red. The energy was dense, like the room was made of electricity, and held breath. As Sundar took the stage. The room fell quiet. He stood at the podium. Meena stood just behind him. He looked down at the notes he had written and then folded them, placing them aside. I came here today not as a CEO, he began, not as an expert or a leader, or someone who claims to know the answers. I came here as someone who made a decision to trust a young woman who had every reason to give up, who had been discarded by the system, ignored by the people in power. And I want to tell you what I've learned since that decision. He paused. We don't fix the world with policies alone. We fix it when we stop protecting systems more than people. When we stop seeing whistleblowers as threats and start seeing them as what they truly are, mirrors, showing us who we really are. The screens behind him lit up images, not of graphs, not of contracts, but of children from Meena's village, drinking. From the first installed filter she had built, smiling, alive. We can't change the past, Sundar said. But we can choose what we defend now. The room was still. Some people looked moved. Others looked tense. A few turned to whisper into phones. And then the moment broke. A man in a dark gray suit stood near the back. He lifted a hand, not for applause, but to speak. He was one of the board members from Sundar's former company. His voice echoed across the room. Mr. Pichai, he said, you've accused multiple entities of corruption and cover-up. But what you failed to mention, what's conveniently left out, is that one of the very reports that enabled the original contract bore your electronic signature. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Sundar blinked. Frowned. That's impossible, he said. The man raised a document. We verified it. Digital records confirm you signed off on the filtration specs 8 years ago. The compound you now claim is dangerous. You approved it. For a moment, time slowed. Sundar's pulse roared in his ears. He remembered the project. Remembered the late-night emails. The pressure to move fast. But the compound, he hadn't seen that detail. He hadn't known. Or had he? Doubt crept in. Had he missed something? Overlooked it? You're saying I authorized it, Sundar said slowly, without knowing what I was authorizing. Either you knew, the man replied, or you were negligent. Which one is it? The room shifted again. Eyes changed. Some now unsure. Others suddenly eager. Scandal tastes better than integrity. Me and stepped forward. He didn't know. How? Do you know? The man shot back. Because I've read every file, she said. The metadata was altered. The compound was inserted after his approval. A hush. We found the original version, she added. His signature's there, but the compound wasn't. It was added later when the file was converted. The man said nothing. He didn't need to. The seed had been planted. And Sundar knew this was their final move. If they couldn't stop the truth, they would muddy it. Turn the hero into a hypocrite. The summit concluded in chaos. News outlets scrambled. For angles. Was Sundar a whistleblower or a man trying to erase his own guilt? Social media exploded. Conspiracy theories bloomed. Support turned to suspicion in hours. That night, back at the hotel, Sundar sat on the floor. His suit wrinkled, his phone on the carpet beside him. Meena sat near him. Silent. He spoke first. Maybe they'll never believe us. Maybe, she said. He stared at the ceiling. Do you think we failed? She thought about it. Then shook her head. I think we lit something that won't go out. He looked at her. And for the first time since the trial began, he let the weight fall. He cried. Quietly. Not out of fear or regret, but release. Because he knew he had done what was right. And sometimes that's the only victory you're given. In the days that followed, independent journalists uncovered the metadata trail Meena had found. The forgery was proven. Sundar's signature was cleared. The board member resigned, but the world didn't cheer. They just moved on. As they always do. Still in a village by the hills. The filters kept running, and in a small lab nearby, Meena kept building Dot not for recognition, Dot not for forgiveness, Dot, but for the future Dot and Sundar. Far from the headlines, far from the lights. Begin again, Dot, not as a CEO, not as a name, just as a man, quietly. Rebuilding the world one small human decision at a time.